James Shillingford on Facebook asked, how do you plan to get top-level coaching available to all your members?
That's a good question. I think it's increasingly happening. The demand for coaching courses and qualifications with Coach Bowles has been really, really great over the last sort of few months. But for me, the big challenge, and coming from a sport like hockey where junior coaching is just part of the fabric, the big challenge is to sort of create a culture of coaching in our sport and really get people to value coaching. So some of that is around the international setup and making sure that coaching is role modelled at that level. Some of it's around content and the great stuff that we can deliver to players up and down the country of all abilities to get them to play better. I play a bit of golf, and the amount of coaching videos about how I can avoid my slice, I wouldn't care to imagine how many hours I've sort of spent looking at those. I think there are participation products that are important. So in cricket, there's All Stars Cricket. In hockey, quick sticks, which are junior products that naturally link to coaching, and there's a need for coaches. And ultimately, that's going to drive people wanting to do the qualifications, clubs seeing a return on investment for those qualifications, and coaches really valuing doing that. And I think as we mature, Bowls England will continue to invest in coaching bursaries to make it easier for people to take those courses on. And I'm really excited about the development of the Centres of Excellence that Coach Bowles are looking at, which will mean that we'll have coaching hubs up and down the country, because I know some of the challenges in certain parts of the country has been getting the coaching qualifications and courses up and running where there hasn't been quite so much demand. So generally, I'm pretty enthusiastic about the prospects of coaching becoming more a more fundamental part of everything that we do in the sport.
Oh, good. And I think it's sort of related. Lewis Voicey asks, do you support and will there be a move towards completely free bowls for all under 18s?
I don't think there will, Lewis. I do think it's important to have a system in place where people have free taster sessions, but I think one of the issues in our sport is we tend to try and give things away for free, and we think that price is a reason why people don't play our sport, and I don't fundamentally think that's true. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm perfectly comfortable about paying for cricket coaching, football coaching, tennis coaching. In fact, they do quite a lot of sport.
What don't they do?
My kids, none of this is for free, and I don't really look at it on the fact that it's about the sort of value itself. It's how does the price equate to the experience my children are having, and I think the key for clubs is to give those children great experiences, and that is about the coach. It's about the enthusiasm and the energy of the coach. It's the type of organisation of those coaching sessions so that kids have lots of goes, lots of bowls. They're not sitting there or standing there listening to someone talk or listening to long speeches about etiquette. Not that etiquette at times isn't important, but perhaps less so to a 7 or 8-year-old. And I think the clubs really need to look at junior coaching and junior provision in a slightly more commercial way, and then Bowls England need to be driving that demand and creating centrally that interest for youngsters to play the sport. And I genuinely think that there is interest there. I think there are lots of kids out there who want to play sport, want to be competitive, but won't necessarily gravitate to the more obvious sports. And even if they do fall out of our sport and play a bit of football instead for a few years, they are much more likely to come back into our sport, whether it be in their 30s, 40s or 50s, if they've had a good childhood experience of giving our sport a go.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good parallel here with someone like Ed Morris, who got into the sport very young, now works in bowls and is part of the performance squad. But as you say, like it's getting them early, but getting them interested early and holding that interest. And yeah, they might drop off the radar a little bit, but actually it's when they come back, if they've had the positive experience, they will remember that. And bowls will become, when they get to 30, 40, bowls becomes a relevant option once again.
Definitely. And getting more people like Ed doing coaching,
yes,
being coached by by somebody really relatable and inspiring, then that's going to be a really important thing. And I think most people who played sport will remember their first coach, or they'll remember their first teacher that inspired them, and that's all part of it.
Yeah, and another thing that crops up relatively regularly, and I've put here a number of people ask this, but I think it's another thing that people have traditionally seen as potentially a barrier to the sport. What are the plans on uniform requirements? We get this sort of question quite a lot on our social media channels and lots of opinions and observations. But what's your take on uniform requirements, and how do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting how many people commented on it as part of the research as well, this sort of barrier that we have. And it's funny, I would not just pick out uniform. I think it's easy just to talk about uniform because it's very, very visible. But for a sport that is so doable and so accessible, physically, geographically, financially, we do tend to put some unnecessary barriers in the way, whether it be big hedges, members only signs, and to go back to the question, uniforms. Interestingly, I think there's a big gap between what Bowls England's position on this and the reality. So Bowls England's position is that if you're having a go at our sport and playing casually, as long as you're wearing the right footwear and you don't damage the greens, frankly, we don't mind what anyone wears. And at Bowls Big Weekend, we're obviously extolling the benefits of just turning up, wearing whatever, flat pair of shoes, and off you go. We do believe, though, that when it gets to a level and you're starting to represent your club or represent your county, there needs to be a uniform, like that. There needs to be in all sports. But frankly, we don't care what colour it is and how it looks. And I think it's a fairly easy thing to migrate from maybe the traditional look to having a team kit. And there are countless clubs up and down the country who have got a team kit and shorts and tracksuit bottoms and colours that match their logo and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't say that we've got any plans, and we certainly don't want to dictate policy to anyone. But anybody that is listening to this, and it is a frustration, I think trying to inspire club and county to work with ACIT, to look at a club kit and get the team to invest in that. And for me, there is no reason why people playing bowls would look any different to lots of different sports, tennis being an example. So we're certainly not putting any barriers up, and we really hope that clubs who do want to get more people playing will make decisions that make it as easy as possible for them to do so.